The lore of Takeaway SMP is very, very long and very, very confusing, so I made this video to explain what happened, and this video also took me a very, very long time to make, so you'll hear that I actually get a new mic halfway through. Also, since the lore is very, very long and confusing, there'll be a C for something that's canon, and a HC which means headcanon. Canon stuff is basically just stuff we agreed on. 27th of December, 2020. Farkie and Ben have just won a war against the criminals Josh SP and Jambo. Chendrog is also there, but we'll get back to them in a bit. During the chaos, Josh and Jambo had spawned a wither at Ben and Farkie's base. However, then Ben and Farkie and their friends just went and nuked the entire of Josh and Jambo's base, so revenge. Then, in the chaos, Josh and Jambo managed to escape. However, one person was left behind. One person who would change their lives forever. One person who would cause so much chaos, confusion, and bloodshed over a British bakery brand. This one person was BS Games 24. Now, Blake disliked Josh and Jambo as much as Ben and Farkie did. However, he offered an alternative solution to all the bloodshed and violence. And in return for Ben and Farkie's help in creating it, Blake would help them by letting them use it on them. What am I talking about exactly? Well, it's these things. I'm really sure these won't cause any problems in the future whatsoever. Meanwhile, in the nearby land of Orthea, Loppezz, Snowlar and Kotick leading a rebellion against a dictatorship known as the Imperium. This war drags on for most of January, as the three are later joined by an experienced and skilled veteran known as T5. Despite their strength, the four of them could not win, and after a decisive defeat, they have to retreat. In a faraway land, there's an old man who's a zombie who's obsessed with taking over the world as a zombie. It confuses me as well, don't worry. This power-hungry old guy is, of course, ZombieDwarf. When Zombie finds out the new arrivals, he is outraged, sending out a band of the most feared mercenaries in the land, known as Pugrilla. These mercenaries made quick work of their opponents, at one point even managing to kill Loppezz. But then, the completely unexpected happened. T5 entered the fight, brandishing no weapon, only a fist. If it was a legend, if it was a myth, T5 successfully managed to push back Pugrilla and save his friends. But he wasn't done yet. Now, the attackers have become the defenders, with T5 charging into battle against them, sending them a clear and stern message: never to mess with them again. ZombieDwarf had failed. His dreams for a powerful and overruling zombie horde had been crushed. But when you can't beat them, join them. Zombie decided to join the others and leave behind his violent ways for now. However, Zombie and the others knew that they could not stay around in this area and avoid war. They would have to go elsewhere. And elsewhere, they went. Things started off slow for the new arrivals, with ZombieDwarf making a farm, and Loppezz building a house on the side of a mountain. However, they weren't the only ones in the area. Dennis and Ice Venom 9 already lived nearby, where the new settlers called home. Now, Dennis already lived with Ice Venom. However, Dennis wanted to go live with the others now. However, Ice Venom manipulated Dennis into staying, and Loppezz could not sit idly by while this happened. So, they enlisted the help of a new settler, BS Games 24, and the two of them would go rescue Dennis from Ice Venom. The rescue mission proved a massive success for Loppezz and Blake, as the two massively overpowered their opponents, due to Loppezz being the only one with a full set of diamond armor on the server. And after a brief chase and skirmish, Dennis was captured. Blake and Loppezz took Dennis back to Lopez's base by boat, where they would imprison him, until a solution to the problem had been solved. Then, like literally 3 minutes later, Ice Venom just came and broke Dennis out of prison. Quickly realizing what had happened, Blake and Loppezz tried to intercept them, but their efforts had failed, and Ice Venom escaped with Dennis back to their home. Returning the next day, Loppezz found that their entire base was griefed with lava, and they knew the only two people that could have done it were Ice Venom and Dennis. They had now taken this way too far and escalated the conflict even further. But then the next day, Loppezz received an unexpected visitor. It was Dennis. He'd come to apologise for what he'd done, but Loppezz, outraged by the griefing of his base, argued with Dennis over what he had done. However, eventually, the two came to an agreement that if Dennis and Ice Venom were to make a peace treaty, then Loppezz would sign it, along with his new allies in Blake's new organisation, Greg's. These new allies being, of course, Blake and ZombieDwarf. And for the first time in a long time, there was peace. And for the first time in a long time, even Josh SP could walk around spawn without any threat of being killed. And later that day, Josh started to make his way home, to the base that him and Jambo had built, a few thousand blocks from spawn. But, in the far north, a new challenger approaches. the Brigade. Ben and Farkie had made their base 18,000 blocks from spawn. By doing this, Josh would never find them or see them coming, giving them ample time to prepare and get geared for the incoming manhunt. In their time in the snow mountains of the far north, they recruited T5, after hearing about the legends of how he took on an entire army with just his fist. And, whilst Josh was making his way home through the nether, Ben and Farkie saw their chance to strike, after following Josh through spawn and back into the nether. Initially, Josh stood still, shocked and confused about how they'd tracked him here. But then his instincts kicked in, and he began to run through the nether. The three would fight on the nether highway, connecting to Josh's base, with Josh only able to slow them down by attempting to trap them in the lava below. However, in Josh running away from them, he was actually leading them straight to his base and straight to Jambo. Arriving back to his base, Josh and Jambo were cornered. They had nowhere to go, and Ben and Farkie were swarming their house. But Ben only wanted to kill Josh. Jambo was not his concern. However, when Ben went to kill Josh, Jambo jumped in the way, sacrificing himself. And in the confusion, Josh managed to slip away. In Ben's rage, he mistook Farkie for Josh, immediately attacking him. However, after a few moments, the two realised what was going on, and they continued to chase Josh, despite the ground that he had already gotten. Eventually, after 20 minutes of chasing, they found him, and Ben slayed Josh. The Brigade had taken their first victory, and in doing so, they had established themselves as one of the great powers of the server. Later that day, Farkie goes to Loppezz's base and they sign a treaty, which formalises the alliance between Greg's and the Brigade. Both sides met at spawn. The atmosphere was very tense. However, Zombie and Loppezz had deliberately chosen a day when Blake couldn't be there. This was because they knew that Blake would never agree to a treaty with them. The treaty was signed by Loppezz, Zombie, Ice Venom, Dennis, Farkie and T5. However, in not consulting Blake, they had made a grave mistake, since when he returned a few days later, he was absolutely outraged. He immediately headed straight to Lopezz's base, grabbed the treaty and burned it. It was their duty to bring justice to Ice Venom. Blake, Farkie and Ben would immediately move to capture Ice Venom, forcing him to dig a massive hole to bedrock for punishment. This was a step too far for Loppezz, who immediately called on Josh for help. Josh, Jambo, Loppezz and Dennis would go and rescue Ice Venom from Blake's captivity. Their plan worked almost flawlessly, with Jambo setting off TNT inside Greg's, distracting Blake long enough so that Josh and Loppezz could sneak in and grab Ice Venom. But in the fighting, Dennis was captured by Ben and Farkie. Greg's was gone. The place that Blake had called home was gone. In his burning rage, he went and destroyed the entire of Josh and Jambo's base, including their brand new McDonald's. After this, Dennis was imprisoned at the brand new prison at spawn. Ice Venom had escaped and they had lost the battle, and Ben, in his fury, invited Josh to a meeting where Ben would declare war on Josh, giving him 1 week to prepare and get allies. No matter what, Ben was going to humiliate Josh and bring a crushing defeat upon those that decided to help him. But Josh was far from alone. The day of the war began, with two different, clear sides emerging. Blake had recruited the young warrior Mullenly, boosting their numbers up to 5 and reducing their numerical disadvantage. Whilst Josh was incredibly enthusiastic about starting a war against the Brigade, Loppezz and Zombie weren't so much. They still sought out a diplomatic solution, opting to meet Blake and Farkie at the prison where Dennis was held. Loppezz attempted to fabricate a deal where Dennis would be free and the war would be avoided. However, Blake could not forgive Loppezz or Dennis, and Farkie and Ben would not forgive up in their attempts to find Josh. And as Farkie left, he told Loppezz, "The war is inevitable now." Zombie and Loppezz decided to join the others and fight the Brigade. And so, later that day, the two sides met outside Spawnhouse. Zombie and Loppezz tried one last, final time to try and bring a peace of settlement to the situation. But this only fueled Blake. He was going to destroy Ice Venom. And with Loppezz throwing 3 poison potions and Blake firing his rocket launcher, the battle had begun. Blake immediately went for Ice Venom, almost killing him straight off the bat if it wasn't for Loppezz defending him. Farkie went straight for Dennis, whilst T5 went for Zombie, Mullenly holding off against Josh and Jambo. Unexpectedly, the attackers turned around and headed straight away from spawn, with their opponents closely following behind. A deadly pursuit raged across the deserts of spawn, with Loppezz using the Ender Pearl to capture Blake and kill him. It seemed that Josh's army now had the upper hand, but this was far from the truth. A few hundred blocks away, Ben had prepared a trap. 15 stacks of TNT laid underneath the ground, waiting for the right moment to go off and destroy their opponents. However, when Farkie went down there to set the trap off, there was a creeper down there, and it set the trap off way too soon. Josh's army advanced on the obsidian tower right in front of them, confused about what it was and what it was doing there. And that is when it happened. A tidal wave of TNT surged across the savanna biome they're in, ripping through the land, forcing them to turn away, evacuating back towards the desert biome where Blake had died. Ben immediately opened fire with his firework crossbow, inflicting heavy damage on their opponents. And with that, the Brigade began a fierce counter-attack. The Brigade was going to win this war no matter the cost, and no matter how long it took, they were going to win. Farkie raced after Dennis, closely followed behind by Josh, Loppezz, and Jambo. Ice Venom attempted to go after Ben, but failed, dying in the process. The zombie who had attempted to help him was now trapped, surrounded by T5, Ben, and Mullenly. In one final, desperate attempt to escape, he used his trident to try and get out of the battle, but failed, falling to his death. Farkie fought off Loppezz, Josh, Jambo, and Dennis, coming close to death at one point. At the last moment, the Brigade arrived, decisively turning the tide. Mullenly chased down Dennis, killing him, whilst Ben fought Jambo, and Farkie and T5 fought Josh and Loppezz. Eventually, Mullenly came in and killed Jambo too. Josh and Loppezz panicked, beginning to flee the battlefield. Whilst Josh used his Riptide Trident to gain distance, Loppezz was left to run, chased down by his opponents. And after reaching their mountainside home, Loppezz was slain by Mullenly. Josh had flown over his trident, and with that, the war was over. The Brigade rounded up whoever was left of the enemy team at spawn, forcing them to a humiliating peace deal. And Blake, blaming Loppezz for organising the entire war, escorted him to prison. But after everything, it wasn't over. Jambo and Josh had regrouped, but from their faraway base, they were willing to carry on the fight. Not long after, Dennis broke Loppezz out of prison, and they sailed far away, settling upon a distant coastline. This was their forever land, a home far from home. But one day, they knew they would reclaim their home. They would rise again.